Hi, everybody. My name is David Brydan. I'm a historian of international relations at King's College London. And I wanted to talk today very briefly about the third question on our list. Is our existing toolkit for studying internationalism appropriate for thinking about today? Where are the blind spots? I think as historians, when we think about internationalism, we think about it as something that happens face to face in physical gatherings of people from around the world. International conferences and exhibitions are therefore the archetypal internationalist events. And those physical meetings were important for defining the international sphere. If you think about particularly, say, the late 19th or the early 20th century, they often involved considerable time, money, and effort to attend. People, if they wanted to travel to conferences in different continents, would often have to spend days or even weeks on boats. They would have to take a considerable amount of time out of their lives to participate in international efforts. And they therefore represented a significant kind of international interlude in the lives of their participants, distinct from their local or national roles. And conferences, international conferences themselves, were often elaborately curated affairs designed to promote personal connections between participants from different backgrounds and cultures, dinners, visits, cultural events, and things like that. So I think studying these physical encounters between people from different countries are part of our toolkit as historians studying the history of internationalism. And a lot of our research into that history involves analysing the functions and implications and workings of these kind of international physical meetings. But one of the obvious changes brought about by the COVID crisis is the reduction of these kind of international physical face-to-face encounters. Instead, what we've seen is a new kind of Zoom internationalism, international meetings such as the G20 or the World Health Assembly taking place via video call. Now, of course, physical meetings will hopefully resume at some point, but it seems likely that the future may see less physical face-to-face internationalism and more digital internationalism, either because of health restrictions or reluctance to travel due to climate change. So the question then, I think, do we have the tools we need to understand this kind of digital internationalism, this Zoom internationalism, and its consequences? In some ways, of course, it's fairly familiar. Thanks to recent research, we know a lot about the mechanics of internationalism, about the ways in which transport and communication technologies, from the development of telegraph lines and telegraph codes to simultaneous translation technologies, have helped to shape international cooperation in different ways. Scientists and public health experts working together today from around the world via Zoom and email may be a lot quicker than those in the past working by letter and physical journal, but they're not necessarily doing something of a different kind. But in other ways, I think this form of digital internationalism does seem to be distinct to what went before. So if much of the legwork behind international organizations, agreements, conferences in the past came through the kind of informal exchanges you get on the margins of the main conference or the main talks, or through very long face-to-face conversations lasting maybe days or weeks between negotiators, between participants, is international cooperation then likely to be hampered by the absence of these kind of very long face-to-face or kind of unplanned interactions? Can we argue, for example, that the lack of global political coordination or even economic coordination in the current crisis, even in comparison to the recent 2008 financial crisis, is a function in part of the fact that political leaders and officials aren't able to meet face-to-face for any substantial period of time? And does it change the ways in which people think or talk about internationalism? So part of the reason that so many people in the past adopted an explicit internationalist identity was precisely because they participated in events and organizations that belonged to a very obviously distinct international realm. But in the age of COVID and its endless video calls, there is much less of a practical or a psychological distinction involved in international cooperation. So if someone like Boris Johnson or any other national leader is spending the majority of their time on video calls with people in the UK or in their own countries, how does it feel different to dial into a G20 meeting if that meeting lacks all the usual diplomatic and cultural paraphernalia of international events? And if people then don't feel the distinctiveness of international cooperation, does that make them then less likely to identify themselves as internationalists, to use the term or to support the principles which appear to unite many internationalists of the past? So as well as the mechanics of internationalism, it seems to me that the psychology of internationalism is going to be an important question when we're thinking about 2020. And that suggests that more than ever, studying internationalism needs to involve not just the study of high diplomacy and international structures, but thinking about individual international actors, both elites and ordinary people. And what does international cooperation mean to them? How does it feel? And how is it different from interactions at a local or national level?